Name and spelling?
Name and spelling, yep.
Stacey Pearsall, Staceypearssall.
And then give me your official title.
Your military title.
Oh. My name is Stacey Pearsall, and I am a U.S. Air Force Staff Sergeant retired.
Perfect, perfect. So Stacey, let's jump in and introduce yourself and Charlie.
Hi, I'm Stacey Pearsall. I'm an Air Force veteran, and this is my service dog, Charlie.
Excellent. Stacey, let's talk about joining the Air Force. Tell me a little bit about that decision.
Well, the military is a family business, and when it came to deciding what I was going to do with my life, I was looking at art school because I was the artist in the family, and I was going to go against the grain a bit. Well, somehow I got swayed back to the military because my sister had enlisted in the Air Force. I went and saw her graduate from basic training, and I was very much inspired. And of course, being very competitive, we're only a year and 4 days apart, I wasn't going to let her outdo me, right? She was the first active duty A-10 crew chief in Air Force history. So I had a lot of competition to catch up on, right? I called my uncle, who gave assignments to young airmen that were going through basic training. Like, he's the one that said, if you don't have a guaranteed job, this is what you're going to do. So I called him up and I said, hey, Uncle Joe, what jobs out there are for creative people? And he kind of laughed a little bit because it's an oxymoron. Military and art really don't go hand in hand. But he said, well, we've got photography, videography, or graphics design. Now, I was 17, and I went with whatever opened up first, and that was photography. From there, I spent my first 2 years in the Midwest. Ironically, I was a military brat. We bounced all over the place, and I graduated from Canton, South Dakota, population 2,787. My graduating class was a whopping 80 people. When I joined the Air Force, I said, send me anywhere in the world but to the Midwest. And when you create a dream sheet for the military, I was like, I'll go to Turkey, I'll go to Korea, I'll go wherever. Nobody wants to go, except don't send me to the Midwest. My first assignment was in Nebraska. So I worked really, really hard to join the bowling league, do some extracurricular activities, and continue to build a portfolio. I finally got accepted to a unit in England where I continued to travel and build a portfolio. And in that time frame, I had found out about this really cool unit called Combat Camera. And at the time, it was very exclusive. You had to be a really great photographer, but you also had to be physically fit and excel in all your evaluations and then go up to a board to actually be admitted. At the time, there were not a lot of women. And usually somebody had to die or retire, frankly, for a position to open up. There were only 50 for still photographers. And so I felt like I had a snowball's chance in hell in getting in. And like any person who wants something, they're going to beg and plead and grovel and I did all those things. Plus, I did the portfolio. I kept training. And I put a portfolio in. I found out in July of 2001 that I was accepted in the Combat Camera. And then 9/11 happened. And that changed the pace of the military across the board. And, you know, we went right into Afghanistan. By the time I reported to my Combat Camera unit, they were all gone. I basically came to a unit that was empty. And so I had a lot of catching up to do. I had training and everything, and I was on my first combat deployment within a year. And from there, I was on the road about 280 days a year.
Good catch.
We'll just wait.
Good catch.
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole before it's all unusable. So.
FedEx.
And he's slowly
Do
exiting.
you want a sip of water?
Do I need it?
No.
Okay.
You maybe have a better vantage point than I
I think we're good to go.
Okay.
All right. So I put my portfolio in, and in July of 2001, I found out that I was accepted. So I was ecstatic. By the time I reported to my unit in January of 2002, everyone was gone. They were in Afghanistan, they were in the Horn of Africa, everywhere for the global war on terrorism. And so I had a lot of catching up to do, all the training. And it took me about a year, but I was on my first combat deployment within that year. And from there, I spent 280 days on the road. I was wounded for the first time in February of 2004, and then came home, rehabilitated, got got back out, did a few more deployments, and then got wounded again back in 2007, and that was the end of my career.
So tell me a little bit about,
You want me to rotate him back where he was, or?
No, it looks good.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Looks good.
nice branding in there, right?
He knows his job.
Chewie knows how to do it.
He's like, I got this, woman. Just go with it, okay?
So tell me about next steps at that point. What happened after you retired from the Air Force? And we can talk a little bit about the Veterans Portrait Project as well.
Okay. After my injury in 2007, my body was physiologically done, and it was devolving very, very quickly. I was medevaced, and then I started right away into medical rehabilitation, and that was about 18 months. And I was working really hard. The whole goal was just to get back to active duty and get back to the game, right? Because I was 17 years old when I enlisted, and I was now 27. So I spent 10 years doing this job and loving it, and suddenly the doctors were telling me all the things I couldn't do anymore. And even after doing 18 months of just, I'm sorry, it's not hard not to get upset by it, but when you invest so much time in just trying to get back where it's hard to admit that this is the new normal. And so everybody is trying to be positive, and they're saying, yeah, just keep going, but the whole time they knew it was never going to happen. I just didn't know it. So finally, after all that time, I finally was medically retired. And to be medically retired, I always joke around and say I was the youngest retiree in the state of South Carolina. But I had to figure out what was next for me, because physically the doctors were fixated on all the things I couldn't do. I couldn't stand for prolonged periods of time. I couldn't lift anything over 5 pounds. I wasn't able to run anymore, and I always wanted to run a marathon. And anyway, that put me into a spiral. I think the other thing is, and what you don't really know from looking at me, I made a lot of friends. As a combat photographer, I was bouncing around from unit to unit, got to know a lot of people, and very intimately. And when you have shared trauma, there's nothing that solidifies a friendship more deeply and more quickly than combat. And when they died, I didn't have the luxury of taking the time to grieve properly. And so carrying one person after another with me, and then suddenly I had no more distractions. It was all right there, ever present, the unresolved traumas, the unprocessed grief, and of course mourning my career. And also mourning the fact that I would never be who I once was. I thought about suicide every day for the better part of a year. And the physical stuff, that was one thing. Like to feel the physical pain meant that I was still alive and in some way, on the right side of the dirt. But the emotional stuff, that was always going to be the hardest part. I think what was more complicating in all of it was being a young woman and always being marginalized, always being looked past, always being looked over, always being grilled about my service, when seeing that guys of the same age or the same ilk weren't going through that. It was just additionally traumatizing. So I no longer fit into the military world. I was not considered a veteran. And to look at me, I look able-bodied. And so nobody saw the seizures that I was having. Nobody saw the neuropathy. Nobody saw the physical problems I was dealing with, because you weren't going to see it. I certainly wasn't going to let you see it. Only if you knew me would you see that. And even today, every day I wake up, it's making the decision to put on a brave face and move forward and keep on. But I guess what I'm getting at is I felt like everybody had their idea of who they thought I was, and certainly not who I am. And that really began to cloud my own judgments. I was in the VA hospital waiting for my appointment, and I was getting stared at like I always do, because I don't really fit in. I'm not your normal face of the veteran. And an older veteran came by, and he was a volunteer. I could tell he was wearing the red vest, and he was walking along, and then he stopped in his tracks, and he kind of looked back at me, and I could tell, oh my God, please don't come talk to me. Please don't come talk to me. I was in that sort of negative headspace. Of course, he came and talked to me. He sat down, and it's just, I wanted to unleash all the dark vitriol that had built up, all that toxic emotions, and just spew it onto this poor innocent guy who obviously wanted to just help. Here's what happened in that moment, though. When I thought everybody was being prejudiced against me, I was being prejudiced against them. Just assuming that they thought all of those, it was in my head. I mean, granted, a lot of it was true, but so much of it I had manifested and magnified in my head. And all I needed was this one person, this World War II veteran by the name of Mickey Dorsey, to reach out and throw me a lifeline. It was then I realized, okay, I can continue to complain about the problem, which is people's lack of understanding of how diverse the veteran community is, what disabilities look like, and what our needs are from a veteran standpoint. Or I could start being part of the solution. And I still had a skill set. I still had something to give, even though the doctor said I wouldn't or shouldn't be doing it. I gave them something to think about. So I worked at the VA, set up my studio in the hospital, and I began to take portraits of my fellow veterans and sharing their stories. And then we'd have pop-up exhibitions, and we'd have community panels and talk and discuss about veterans, like I'm wanting sharing about my experience as a woman, unique experiences. So I said, okay, this is getting me one foot in front of the other. This is getting me thinking a little bit more about the future instead of this being my last day. So instead of it being my last day, I was thinking about the next day and the one in front of that. How was I going to extrapolate this feeling, this sense of purpose, this task that I had? I set this crazy goal that I would photograph veterans in every state. And thinking that would be a lifetime endeavor, I suddenly was 5 or 6 years into it and 20 states down. It was the craziest adventure. But along the way, I still was not dealing with stuff. The stuff that a lot of veterans carry around in silence. Those emotional traumas and hiding the physical disabilities, because I did not want to rely on everyone else to carry the weight for me. That's not in a veteran's vernacular typically. We don't know how to ask for HELP. That's a 4-letter word, you know? When I had a grand mal seizure, I couldn't not ask for help. And that set me back because I was now suddenly unable to drive. I was fearful of going out in public by myself in case I had another seizure and I didn't know what to do. And so suddenly I was reliant on everybody around me. And that made me very uncomfortable and it set me back emotionally. I kind of pulled up my bootstraps and said, okay, I'm gonna keep pressing on. I had a crew of assistants for my Veterans Portrait Project, a lot who didn't even know I had a traumatic brain injury and that I was coping with a lot of this stuff. Only one person on that team really knew. And I was at an American Legion convention when I ran into some representatives from VetDogs. And it just so happens that one of them was Joe Worley with his service dog Benjamin. And I was photographing him, and in the back of my mind I'm thinking, I've been thinking about a service dog for a long time. I wonder if a service dog would be a really great partner for me. But at the same time, I was talking myself out of it. I mean, here I was on the road photographing veterans who were double amputees, who were missing both arms, who had open head traumas, and saying, okay, priority-wise, I'm gonna just wait until all of these people are taken care of and they have a service dog and they have all the things they need because, I'm coping. The truth was, I was barely coping. And when I was talking to Joe, he was like, why would you do that? If you feel like a service dog is going to enhance your life and provide freedom from what's going on in your head, freedom from reliance on other people. If that animal is going to enhance your life, why wait? So I went home, put in an application, and got on the wait list. And just a week later, the Today Show launched their Puppy with a Purpose program, and out popped this little black lab puppy just bounding down the red carpet. And I tapped my husband on the shoulder. I'm like, hey, that's VetDogs. That's the organization I applied for. And I watched this little dog grow up with all of the other Americans who were tuning into the Today Show. And I watched him get named. I watched as he was trained live on television. I watched Olivia Poff, his puppy raiser, talk about the importance of service dogs. And I'm like, that just listening and watching solidified why I really needed that in my life. And about 18 months after my application went through, I got a call saying, this is VetDogs. We have a dog we're considering for you. We just want to talk about, what exactly your needs are so that we're pairing the right dog for you. I had no idea what they were brewing behind the scenes and how big it was going to be, because I had no idea I was going to be paired with Charlie.
Let's talk.
Only 1 second to get your battery
Yeah.
swapped.
They're gonna swap batteries, and I'm gonna throw the next question so you can start thinking through your answer.
I'm sorry I'm long-winded
No,
with my
this is
answers.
great. It
Good
is
story.
much easier to cut down a long answer than it is to stretch out
A short one?
answer,
Yeah.
so this is perfect. My next question for you is gonna be about Charlie and the impact that had. What does Charlie do for you as that service animal?
Mhm.
And again, we're still swapping batteries, so just let that percolate a little bit. I'll throw the next one at you because that's some
Great
impressive.
percolating.
That was great.
Julie, we're good.
All right.
And now I've got I'm feeling misty. Like everywhere is misty. Sorry. Talking about some things. Huh?
Do you want a blot?
Do I need it? Am I like mascara running? Thank you for this award. All right.
Is our lapel mic maybe he's still stuck where he is. I'm gonna sneak around back, and his light's still on, so he should still be.
Okay, fine.
I was just hearing a lot of voices.
Okay.
A lot of whistling.
Like,
Russell.
Oh, it's probably this material.
She whistles while she works.
Do you want me to? Should I move this then?
No, you're good.
it's fine.
We actually don't use it. We use the boom.
Yeah, that's our
It's
backup
kind of more
mic.
backup.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
You're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me about getting Charlie and how that impacted.
Charlie's like, my friend?
What? Moving forward.
Well, when America, I'm sorry, let me gather my shit together. Well, when America's VetDogs called me and they were talking to me about getting the right animal paired, all the things that I really needed help with, and when I was back doing the Veterans Portrait Project, but what I was having problems with was getting off the ground. I was having problems with counterbalance because of my traumatic brain injury. I have frequent vertigo, and I never know when it's gonna hit. So if I'm sitting there, like sometimes I'll just be warbly. I'll have moments of aphasia at times. Walking can be kind of difficult. So having a dog that could help with seizure activity, with vertigo, and then on top of that, and most importantly, mental health. And because I was struggling a lot when I'm in the studio, my back is to everyone else, and that's one of the biggest triggers for me, is having sounds behind me, not knowing what's going on. And so I didn't know what a dog could do for me. Honestly, I was still ignorant as to a service dog's full capabilities. And finally, they said, and here's the thing. They said, we've got this service dog that we think is going to be perfect for you, but with this service dog comes great responsibility. And I'm like, oh God, what does this mean? Well, they said, we are considering you for Charlie. Nothing's ever a guarantee, and I think even all the way up until the day you hit class, even after the dog is presented to you, if it's not a fit, it's not a fit. Like, they're not going to force that pairing to you. but they wanted Charlie to be my partner. And so we had a date to get together to see if we were the right fit. And I tell you what, meeting your partner on the plaza in New York City was definitely a lot. And having that such an intimate moment shared with hundreds of thousands of people, I honestly forgot that anybody else was there because I only saw him. And that's really when you know you have a genuine, true partnership. I will say this, and what I hadn't expected was the day after Charlie and I were introduced, he went back to the campus to continue to prepare for me. And then I went back to doing work because it was going to be a few more weeks before we actually did our training together. And I started looking on the comments on social media. By the way, don't ever do that. But one thing that was resounding was people were saying, the veteran they picked for Charlie, that's a terrible choice. That veteran was not disabled. That veteran was not worthy. That veteran was not a combat veteran. So going all the way back from the very beginning of when I was wounded and I was in recovery, they were hitting on all the things that had made me want to start the Veterans Portrait Project in the first place. Women are combat veterans too. Disabilities are not always external. And every veteran is worthy of a service dog if they need it. I think from that point on, and I think I learned that from the Veterans Portrait Project too, is that it's not an opportunity to get mad. It's an opportunity to educate. And in the 7 years that Charlie and I have been working together, we have touched the lives of literally hundreds of thousands of people. Because together, he's been to 30 states with me doing the Veterans Portrait Project. We have interacted with more than 8,000 veterans on that journey. And, of those 8,000 veterans, they're going to go back and they're going to tell exponentially more veterans about service dogs and what they can do for veterans. And the people that are around us and they see Charlie and I in action are just blown away about the dynamics between the two of us. And I could not do what I did. I could not do 30 states, I guarantee you, without him by my side. And I'll be the first to tell you, Charlie may be my service dog, but he's everyone's emotional support dog in that studio. And when we began to do After Action on PBS, he became my co-host on a national television show. So.
One of the things that John mentioned in his interview that you also kind of touched on was this idea that a lot of these veterans wait too long to reach out. So talk to those veterans. What would you tell them about America's VetDogs?
Every veteran is going to have the path and journey that they're on. And I cannot tell them when the right time is to apply for a service dog. But all I can say is there's never a bad time for one. So I don't care if you're a World War II veteran, get a service dog if you need it. I don't care if you're a Vietnam veteran, apply for a service dog if you need it. And even if you're a young veteran just leaving service and you feel like you have your whole life ahead of you to get a service dog, you never know what you need until you find it. And honestly, I didn't know how much I needed Charlie until we were together.
How is this going to change their lives?
Every person's experience from the military is individual. And that's why treatment for PTSD is individual. That's why physical recoveries are different. A service dog's ability to change a veteran's life is going to be individual. But what I can say is that it's going to be life-changing. What that is for the veteran, it's really up to them.
Stacey, this has been absolutely wonderful. We've reached my last question now, which is to the Congressional Medal of Honor Society. Is there anything you'd like to say to the society about their recognizing America's VetDogs with this Citizen Honors Award?
There's so much that goes into an organization like America's VetDogs. People tend to look at the veterans and their dogs, and yes, we're the face of that. But there are literally hundreds of people working behind the scenes to get the puppies whelped, to raise them, to train them, to foster them, to get them to a point where they're ready for training. Then once they're past that training, to make sure that the veteran has support through the lifetime of their service animal. And then there's the fundraisers. There's the people who go out of their way to volunteer. So it is an army of people. And I just want to thank the Congressional Medal of Honor Society for recognizing all of those individuals, whether how small they feel that they've had an impact through someone like me. But I want to thank the society, and I want to thank all the America's VetDogs volunteers. From the bottom of my heart, you've changed my life.
Excellent, excellent. Stacey, this was fantastic.
Thank you.